Tonight at 10, yet more evidence of the dramatic impact the COVID vaccine is having. The latest data shows just one dose reduces your chances of ending up in hospital by 80%, and it more than halves your risk of developing symptoms.
This is seriously encouraging. It shows the power of science, and what it means for you is that when the call comes, get the jab.
More than 38% of the UK's adult population have now been vaccinated. Also tonight, the Duke of Edinburgh is moved to a specialist heart hospital in London for further treatment. A fall from grace, the former French president Nicolas Sarkozy is found guilty of corruption and given a 3-year sentence.
I mean, I'm in Valencia afterwards, guys. Like, I've got tracking bottoms on my bottoms and I'm comfortable.
And a star-studded Hollywood Awards ceremony, lockdown style, on a good night for the Brits at the Golden Globes.
And coming up in sport on BBC News, the BHA tell Gordon Elliott he can't race horses in Britain, while an Irish investigation into a picture of him sitting on a dead horse is carried out.
Good evening. There's yet more evidence of the dramatic impact the two main coronavirus vaccines being used in the UK are having. The data is based on people in England who were the first to receive the jab. It suggests that just one dose of either the Oxford AstraZeneca or the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine cuts the risk by 60% of people over the age of 70 developing any COVID symptoms. It also reduces by more than 80% the chance of the over 80s needing hospital treatment. But the government stressed that people should still have their second jab and warned that it takes about 3 weeks for the protective effects to develop. Our medical editor Fergus Walsh reports.
A few seconds and it's done. More than 20 million of us have rolled up our sleeves, and confidence in COVID vaccines is soaring here, with good reason. New data from England shows that among the over 80s, a single shot of either the Oxford AstraZeneca or Pfizer vaccines cuts the risk of being admitted to hospital with COVID by more than 80%. The protection takes 3 to 4 weeks to build.
It gives us those first glimpses of how, if we are patient and we give this vaccine programme time to have its full effect, it is going to hopefully take us into a very different world in the next few months. But we have to be patient. We have to push on with the vaccine programme.
Hospital admissions are falling fastest among the over 65s, among the first to get immunised, down by 48% since the start of the year. Compare that to a 35% drop among the under 65s, most of whom have yet to have a jab. And deaths among the over 65s are down by 57% in the same period, compared to a 47% decline in younger ages. Clear evidence that vaccines offer strong protection. But could that be undermined by the emergence of new variants? A nationwide search is underway to track down a person here infected with a variant of the virus that originated in Brazil. 6 cases of the Brazilian variant have been found here, a mutation that seems to evade at least part of the immune system.
These and other mutations are associated with reduced impact of antibodies against the virus in laboratory experiments. The current vaccines have not yet been studied against this variant, and we will need to wait further clinical and trial data to understand the vaccine effectiveness against this variant.
For now, the more contagious Kent variant appears so dominant in the UK, there may be little competitive advantage for other mutated versions, but that could easily change. Suppressing new variants will be far easier if overall case numbers are kept low and vaccine take-up high. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
Well, the Prime Minister has been defending England's border controls after it emerged that officials have been unable to find one of 6 people infected with a variant of coronavirus first found in Brazil. Our political editor, Laura Kuenssberg, has more.
An unwelcome arrival. A new variant of coronavirus has landed on UK soil. With 2 cases near Bristol and 3 in Aberdeen, extra tests are being used to track any spread. But the urgent hunt is for a 6th person with a positive test who can't be found.
Look at what we've done in the case of the South African variant. A massive effort went in there, and the same is going on now to contain any spread of the Brazilian variant.
It's caused concern, not just because there was chaos in Manaus in Brazil where it was first found, but the risk is that it spreads more easily and responds less well to the vaccine too. The mystery patient carrying the variant hasn't been traced because they didn't fill in their paperwork properly. The variant was detected on the other side of the world, in Japan, in early January. On the 15th, the government banned travel to the UK from Brazil and other South American countries, but British nationals were still allowed to fly back as long as they isolated at home for 10 days. After weeks of discussions, the government then changed the policy, deciding on the 27th that Brits coming home from countries at risk would be quarantined in hotels as soon as they arrived. But it wasn't until 3 weeks later, on the 15th of February, that passengers started having to stay in hotels rather than travel home, after the 6 had developed the disease.
Government measures at the border have been too little, too late. They've been behind the curve. The government was warned about putting the hotel quarantining system into place as soon as possible.
Someone carrying the Brazilian variant was able to disappear weeks after the variant was first detected because the government hadn't yet got round to introducing quarantine hotels. Do you believe that that delay will have put people at risk?
No. We had already quarantine in place, and in fact we'd already put in place a ban on direct travel from Brazil. Also, this positive test was on the 12th or 13th of February, we think, and that was obviously over 2 weeks ago, and we haven't seen any further knock-on transmissions in the data.
This is more than just a political "I told you so" moment for the opposition. It's a reminder of the threat from new forms of the virus that will continue to emerge. And the government isn't willing to cut off the country from the rest of the world completely. So it is a risk that won't be straightforward to manage. Last night, London's Heathrow looked as if they were struggling even to manage social distancing in long queues. As the search for the patient with the variant continues, the dilemma is stopping the disease coming in without stopping everything taking off. Laura Kunsberg, BBC News, Westminster.
The latest official figures show there were 5,455 new coronavirus infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period. That's the lowest since September. It means an average of 7,980 new cases were recorded per day in the last week. Across the UK, 14,808 people are in hospital with coronavirus. In the last 24 hours, 104 deaths have been recorded. That's people who died within 28 days of a positive COVID test. On average, 314 deaths were announced every day in the past week, the lowest it's been since the beginning of November. The total number of people who have now died is 122,953. Almost 186,000 more people have had their first dose of a vaccine in the latest 24-hour period. So just over 20 million people have now had their first jab. That's more than 38% of the UK's adult population. Well, our medical editor Fergus Walsh is with me now. So millions and millions of people have now been vaccinated and the results are looking very promising.
They are, Sophie. The evidence on vaccines today is quite simply stunning. They are way more effective than scientists would have dreamt of a year ago. And what we can say pretty categorically tonight is whether you have the Pfizer jab or the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, they both work really well, offering strong protection against serious illness. Now, that's among the elderly, those most at risk, who we'd normally expect to respond less well to vaccines. You'll remember that several European countries decided to restrict their use and not give them to older adults. Well, some breaking news tonight. The French health minister has partially reversed its country's decision, and now the Oxford AstraZeneca jab will be available to people aged 65 to 74 in France. Now, this spectacular effectiveness here just comes after one dose. It will be absolutely essential people have their second shot. That should boost effectiveness beyond 90% and make immunity last even longer. But it's not 100% effective. And while there's still a lot of virus circulating, it's essential that people keep their guard up and maintain social distancing. And then there are these new variants. They are a potential worry, but clinical trials of updated vaccines which will deal with these variants are planned for early summer, and they should be ready, those new updated vaccines, by the autumn, should we need them.
Fergus Walsh, thank you. The Duke of Edinburgh has been transferred to St Bart's Hospital in London for tests on a pre-existing heart condition. He was driven by ambulance today after almost 2 weeks at another London hospital. 99-year-old Prince Philip is expected to remain at Bart's for the rest of the week. Here's our royal correspondent, Nicholas Witchell.
King Edward VII Hospital this morning. An ambulance had been reversed up to a rear entrance. Umbrellas were raised by staff to shield the view of a patient who was being placed into the ambulance. It's believed the patient was the Duke of Edinburgh. As the ambulance departed, it was assumed he was leaving after 13 nights in the hospital to be taken home to Windsor Castle. But at 12:30, this statement was issued by Buckingham Palace. The Duke of Edinburgh was today transferred from King Edward VII's Hospital to St Bartholomew's Hospital, where doctors will continue to treat him for an infection, as well as undertake testing and observation for a pre-existing heart condition. The journey across London was a short one. St Bartholomew's, or Bart's, is Britain's oldest hospital, but it has some of the most modern and extensive facilities for cardiac care. It's a recognised centre of excellence.
It's the largest specialist centre for this type of condition in the UK and one of the largest in Europe. And so you can see all of the subspecialists, whether it's a problem with the heart rhythm, a problem with the blood supply to the heart or the heart muscle, all under one roof and delivering care at the same time.
The Duke has suffered heart issues in the past. In 2011, there was an emergency admission to Papworth Hospital in Cambridgeshire. He'd suffered chest pains at Sandringham. The Queen and his immediate family all went to his bedside. A blocked coronary artery was diagnosed. It had been a close call. Yet there's been no suggestion until today of any recurrence of any heart problems. For a man approaching his 100th birthday, the Duke has seemed in generally good health. Yet his hospital stay is now longer than any previous one. It's unclear whether the Duke will require any surgical procedure on his heart, such as occurred in 2011. On that occasion, he had a stent inserted to relieve the blocked coronary artery. On this occasion, all the palace will say is that he's comfortable and responding to treatment.
Good morning.
And amidst all of this, a message of reassurance from the palace. Tonight it issued footage of the Queen on another video call, unveiling a statue of herself in South Australia. It was recorded a few days ago, so before the latest news of the Duke. But the Queen sounded unmistakably cheerful.
Yes, I would think possibly it might be quite alarming to just suddenly see it out of the window. Gracious that she arrived here unexpectedly.
All of which would seem to emphasise that these royals don't dwell on their problems, they get on with the job. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News.
Well, we can talk to our health editor, Hugh Pym, who is with me now. And just tell us a bit more about why the Duke would be moved to another London hospital now.
Well, Sophie, we know from the statement that doctors want to carry out tests and make observations related to a pre-existing heart condition that the Duke has, so you can understand why they might want to go to a specialist unit like the Bart's Heart Centre with 24/7 availability of really expert clinicians in this field, some of the best in the country. We don't know what this condition is. We can speculate that it's linked back to his blocked coronary artery in 2011 and the stent being put in. Some patients after that procedure experience problems a bit further down the road. It could be that the infection is somehow linked to his heart issue, possibly exacerbating a problem with heart rhythm. So there'll be a lot of monitoring going on, ECGs, there'll be blood pressure monitoring and so on. I just get the feeling, though, that he's been moved to Bart's because of the possibility, no more than that doctors might at some stage want to carry out some form of intervention or procedure.
Hugh Pym, thank you. The former president of France, Nicolas Sarkozy, has been found guilty of corruption. A court in Paris heard wiretap evidence that he offered a magistrate a job in Monaco in return for information about a separate corruption investigation. Sarkozy, who is 66, was sentenced to 3 years prison, 2 of them suspended. He was told he could serve the remaining year at home with an electronic tag. While Lucy Williamson is in Paris for us tonight. Lucy.
Well, this case was something of an accident, the result of a police phone tap in a different investigation that picked up a discussion about bribery between Mr. Sarkozy and his then lawyer. It's not the only trial Mr. Sarkozy is facing, but it is the first, and it's the first time a former president has been given a custodial sentence.
Nicolas Sarkozy arrived at court today, a former president, right up to the salute outside the courtroom doors. Once inside, the president turned defendant. No salutes from the judge, just a dressing down and a guilty verdict. Corruption and influence peddling. For him, his former lawyer, and the judge they tried to bribe. The judge said that Mr. Sarkozy had known what he was doing was wrong and spoke of a dark veil hanging over his lawyer's ethical responsibilities. Years after Mr. Sarkozy left office, his time as president of France continues to generate headlines. Mr. Sarkozy's time in office has prompted several investigations. This trial was the result of an inquiry into campaign financing, in which a police phone tap recorded him and his lawyer discussing plans to bribe a judge in return for information about another investigation into alleged donations by the L'Oréal heiress Liliane Bettencourt. Among those lining up to lend support today, France's Interior Minister.
I never comment on court decisions, but everyone knows the affection, the respect I have for Nicolas Sarkozy, who is a great president of the Republic, and who, in these difficult times, obviously has my support, my friendly support.
Almost a decade after he left office, Nicolas Sarkozy still has a lot of influence and a lot of enemies. To many, he's still the bling-bling president, who was always one step ahead.
There is a tendency to believe that the elites are protected, especially presidents, with presidential immunity. I think this would be the first time a president has gone to jail, and that's a good thing.
Mr. Sarkozy's lawyer said they'd appeal the verdict.
Today, we're obviously appealing against this decision. It sometimes takes time in cases as complicated as this one for the truth to emerge, and I think it will emerge before the magistrates of the Court of Appeal.
The former president is due back in court later this month to face charges of illegally financing his unsuccessful re-election bid in 2012. The machinery of the French state, face to face with the man who once led it. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Paris.
An entire generation of children in war-torn Yemen risks missing an education. After 6 years of civil war, 1 in 5 schools is unusable. Help is hard to come by. The UK government has just announced it's cutting its aid budget to Yemen by more than 50%. Our international correspondent Aura Girin has been to one school where children are trying to learn, despite it all.
It's a hard road for little feet. But in the early morning, on the outskirts of Taiz, they flock here across the rubble. This is their prize equipment, stored nearby under lock and key. Time for morning assembly. Leading the drill, the top student, Ahmed Raghib. The Al Wahda Milad Primary School was the pride of the district until 2016, when it was occupied by Houthi rebels and became a battleground. It has been reclaimed, such as it is, but some days pupils sit and wait for teachers. The government hasn't paid many of them in years. So in this class, there's a substitute. Ahmed fills in. He's 9 years old and has been blind from birth. This is his dream job for the future. In the meantime, he's got a wish list.
سكون جديد، كراسي، أبواب، أطواق، نوسيات، لمبات، بطاريات، أهم شيء تكون بانتي كل شيء. ويشارحنا حدايد جدد الدور الطالعين، وشارحنا الباب يكون من الريح من الشمس والطواق. يا مطر بيخرج فوقنا. أسهل مادة عندي القرآن والعلوم. يا ما هلاش قصة قرون اللي حفظته.
Ahmed, what's that noise?
هذا الرصاص. دائما أسمعهم يقرحون، دائما كل ساعة أسمعهم كل ساعة. ساعة مدفع، ساعة رصاصة، ساعة كل شيء. يوم قال شيخ ذاك قال يموت. يمسك النحاس صار قزع فوقنا. احنا ابتقعنا كل يوم رجعنا خرجنا ما قسيناش.
Frontline or not, classes continue here. Down below, it's mathematics. Over here, it's Arabic language. Teachers tell us the war has already taught these children to be resilient. They say the pupils rarely miss a day. Now, more than ever, they're hungry for education.
School's out, and this is the journey home for Ahmed and his sister Fatima, who's also blind. A friend leads the way. Ahmed calls him his car. A stumble doesn't stop Ahmed. He's a study in determination. Orla Gearan, BBC News, Tyres.
The Scottish Government has agreed to publish the legal advice it was given in the civil case in 2018 against Alex Salmond that it lost. The government admitted it acted unlawfully when investigating allegations of sexual harassment against Mr Salmond. The inquiry into the government's conduct is still ongoing. Our Scotland editor, Sarah Smith, is in Glasgow. And what impact will this have on the war of words between Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon?
Well, Alex Salmond is convinced that this could prove one of his central allegations against Nicola Sturgeon, namely that she ignored legal advice, that her government was likely to lose a court battle with him when he challenged how it had investigated claims of sexual harassment against him. Alex Salmond is convinced that the Scottish Government's own lawyers warned that there was very little chance of winning the case, but the government pursued it anyway for months at considerable public expense. In 2019, the government admitted they had acted unlawfully and they paid Alex Salmond over £500,000 for his legal fees. Now, he's been demanding the release of this advice for months, and so has the Scottish Parliament. It's voted twice to demand that the advice be handed over, but that was ignored. It was only when a motion of no confidence was filed today in the Deputy First Minister, John Swinney, and it became obvious that he was very likely to lose that vote of no confidence, that there was a sudden U-turn. So the legal advice will be handed over to the Holyrood inquiry tomorrow. That'll give them a chance to have a look at it before they take evidence from Nicola Sturgeon herself on Wednesday. And why this really matters is because Alex Salmond says if Nicola Sturgeon did ignore this advice, that the government was likely to lose the legal case, then she will be in clear breach of the ministerial code, and that could provoke demands for her resignation.
Sarah Smith, thank you. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, will unveil his latest budget on Wednesday. Top of the agenda will be getting the economy back on track after a year of lockdowns, severe disruption and high levels of public spending on support schemes for employees and businesses. Our economics editor, Faisal Islam, has been looking at what to expect from the Chancellor's red box.
This week's budget will be historic in terms of the numbers. The Chancellor will hope to make it historic in terms of policy, both to support the rescue from crisis, but also to lay the long-term foundations of a post-pandemic, post-Brexit green recovery. Support for jobs, wages and the economy will continue, and you can see why. During the extraordinary economic hits from the pandemic, unemployment did go up, but rather modestly. But if you add in the number of people supported by the government's furlough scheme, and the number of people supported by the self-employment scheme, you get this picture. And this is why support will be extended also for business cash flow, because not to do so risks a really rather rapid rise in official unemployment.
But the budget will also have to look beyond the immediate rescue to the future recovery of an economy that's undergone a type of heart attack. The current lockdown has again hit the economy hard, but less hard than last year. There will be a rebound, perhaps a little later than expected, but that rebound is not a recovery, and the UK has lost more ground to recover than most. The recovery will have to reflect to a changed, greener economic future. The Chancellor will use the successful vaccine rollout as a blueprint for this recovery. Government spending supporting partnership between scientists and companies, fast-tracking regulations, the UK as a testing bed for new science.
Now, the point of a budget is to balance tax and spend. That is not going to happen immediately, but the Chancellor promises to be honest with the public about the scale of the challenge over the next few years. And this is why last year at his pre-pandemic budget, he anticipated this year borrowing about £54 billion. He ended up borrowing that in just over 1 month. So total borrowing, we think, is going to come in at over £350 billion. And the key thing is that the bulk of that came out of decisions to choose to spend more money to support the economy rather than just taxes falling.
That pattern will persist for longer. General tax hikes are for another day, as the nation can still borrow very cheaply. The budget challenge, getting the economy firing again. Faisal Islam, BBC News.
In Myanmar, the deposed leader Aung San Suu Kyi has appeared via video link in court and was told she faces fresh charges. It was the first time her lawyers had seen her since the military seized power on the 1st of February, detaining many government leaders. Since then, there have been widespread demonstrations, with security forces responding with increasing force. This weekend, at least 18 protesters were killed. Nincha Ai reports from the country's biggest city, Yangon, a warning his report contains distressing images.
Back on the streets, despite the deadly risks, protesters here try to prepare to face the military as the violence from the security forces increases. Nini Autenai, one victim of their brutal response. This is where a young man was shot dead in the chest in Sunday crackdown. He was just 23 years old university student. He lost his life while demanding a return to democracy. He was not alone. In Mandalay, this is where 32-year-old Madesi was killed. Witnesses say Madesi was a bystander, shot in the head near a protest.
She was shot in her temple from the left. I was told the attacker was riding a motorbike. It happened as the soldiers came and fired. People were shouting, "Go inside," so we went inside and shut the doors. We couldn't pick up her body. We couldn't even see it because of the gunfire.
At this court today, Aung San Suu Kyi appeared via video link, the first time she has been seen since the coup. But her lawyers are struggling against the system.
We cannot have any access to the court to look at the screen on the side of the court to look at her face, Aung San Suu Kyi's face, because the judge said we are not permitted.
Security forces here say they are on the streets to enforce the rule of law and accuse the protesters of rioting, arresting hundreds. It's clear the military are not backing down. Ninja A, BBC News, Yangon.
It was a good night for the Brits at the Golden Globes as a host of actors picked up awards, but there was no red carpet, no glitzy event. Instead, the stars took part from home in lockdown style, with everything from designer dresses to pyjamas. Our arts editor Will Gompertz reports.
Welcome to the 2021 Golden Globe Awards.
Tina Fey was on the East Coast, while Amy Poehler was on the West Coast, as they reunited by satellite to co-host the 2021 Golden Globes. They had a little nibble at the hand that was paying them by alluding to the chorus of criticism the awards have attracted for having no black members.
The Golden Globes are awards given out by the Hollywood Foreign Press Association.
The Hollywood Foreign Press Association is made up of around 90 international no-black journalists who attend movie junkets each year in search of a better life.
There was, though, diversity among the winners. Chloe Zhao became the first Asian woman and only the second ever woman to have won the Best Director award for her elegiac road movie Nomadland, which also won Best Picture.
Sometimes a first feels like a long time coming, isn't it? You feel like it's about time.
Andra Day.
Best Actress went to Andra Day for her portrayal of the legendary singer Billie Holiday. Best Actor was awarded posthumously to Chadwick Boseman, who died of colon cancer last year, for his performance in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. There was plenty of British success to celebrate. Daniel Kaluuya won Best Supporting Actor for his portrayal of the Black Panther leader Fred Hampton in Judas and the Black Messiah.
And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.
He was excellent. The technology on the night, not so good.
Hey, am I on? Is this on? Is this on? All right, cool. Can you hear me now?
Sacha Baron Cohen won Best Actor in a Motion Picture Comedy for Borat, the second time he has won the award for playing the mischievous character.
The Crown.
Netflix's royal drama The Crown dominated the television categories.
The Crown.
Josh O'Connor won Best Actor for his Prince Charles, Emma Corrin won Best Actress for portraying Princess Diana, and Gillian Anderson was awarded Best Supporting Actress for playing Margaret Thatcher.
Why do you back me?
Steve McQueen's superb Small Axe series for the BBC was recognised, with John Boyega winning Best Supporting Actor.
I mean, I'm in Balenciagas, guys. Like, I've got tracking bottoms on my bottoms and I'm comfortable, but this is exciting.
And so the awards season is up and running. All attention now turns towards the BAFTAs and the Oscars next month. Who's going to win those? Might they be virtual shows like the Golden Globes? And if so, what lessons were learned from last night's show? Will Gompertz, BBC News.
And that's it from us now on BBC One. It's time for the news where you are. Good night.